Hello, my sweet friends. Welcome back to another video. It has been some time since I have shared a little bit of a medical update, and so that is what I plan to do today. This video is going to feel a little bit more like a podcast, so would love for you to just hit the old pause button, go grab yourself a nice cozy beverage and get cozy, or turn this on while you're in your car driving to work. So I think last time I talked to you, well, last week, you guys got to watch me walk straight into one of the most acute and severe flares that I have ever experienced. And I think a big reason for that is I just got diagnosed with hyperadrenergic POTS, which I'll talk about obviously a lot during this video. But what triggered the flare was I have been pretty homebound for the last several months on medical leave and have spent a lot of time horizontal. And I've not been in, an overstimulating environment in a really long time. And so last Wednesday, I spent almost 3 hours sitting in a very busy, very overstimulating coffee shop and was having, a back and forth reciprocal conversation and, let the adrenaline kick in. And I just rode that a little bit too long. And you guys got to see the result of that. So it is a week and a half approximately later. So that happened last Wednesday, and it is the following Friday. And today is the first day that I feel a little bit more like myself. And so I'm really excited for some of the ideas for videos that I have coming down the pipeline, because this flare was pretty life-changing for me in terms of my ability to respond to the symptoms and, give my body microdoses of what it needed. And I could almost immediately feel the impact of those different strategies that I was trying. And so it really inspired me to think through what are my green, yellow, red symptoms, and, how can I start to recognize some of those symptoms earlier on, the earlier symptoms. So for example, my red zone symptoms are when I get really bad pressure and pain and tightness in my neck and in the base of my skull. And when that travels to the top of my head, that is flare zone for me. But one of the precursor symptoms to that is when I'm standing up, if I start to get pressure in my feet and tingling in my feet, and also if I start to get pain behind my eyes, that is a precursor symptom that allows me to intervene at that point versus moving into the red zone, not being aware of what's happening, and now all of a sudden I'm in a reactive state of mind. And so I spent, the last week and a half really just researching this new condition that I have, and it's been life-changing. So excited to share more on that with you, but I wanted to just take a moment to parse out what my current diagnoses are and what diagnoses are no longer on the table. So previously, back in 2017, I was diagnosed with undifferentiated connective tissue disease, biopsy confirmed small fiber neuropathy, and then I was also diagnosed with myalgic encephalomyelitis and chronic fatigue syndrome, so like the ME/CFS, if you will. And so carried those, for about 6 to 8 years. And then in January of 2024, had mold exposure, and I'm genetically predisposed to receive those toxins and have it send a cascade throughout my body essentially. And so basically since January of 2024, I have just developed a whole slew of new symptoms. And so we've really been trying to sort of narrow down what's been happening since then. And I think that this is one of the most important parts of this video, is to remember that you know your body better than literally anybody in this world. We can certainly trust medical professionals, but they don't always have all of the information in order to have a very clear understanding of what's happening within your body. And so it's a testament to making sure that you continue to advocate and find the right doctors until you figure out what's going on. Because now that I know what's going on, I'm able to intervene, which is going to increase the quality of my life. So I just want to double click on that, emphasize, italicize, bold it. Don't give up if you know that something is wrong and you have not figured out what that name is. So anyway, now that we have that said, that's very important. We're going to continue to move on. So those were my initial diagnoses. And then in 2024, I got diagnosed with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which was from the mold exposure. And so I will continue to carry that diagnosis for the rest of my life. We also thought that I had that my connective tissue disease was evolving into either lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, which is sort of still on the table, right? The reason that it's undifferentiated connective tissue disease is because it will eventually, most likely, it doesn't always, but it will morph into something else, or it will basically define what connective tissue component it is attacking. And so the reason we thought it was rheumatoid arthritis is because I developed a nodule on my elbow, and at that point we added methotrexate injections to see if that would target it, and it did. It completely reduced and removed that nodule. So could still be, down the pipeline, but that's not something that we're focusing on right now, because with, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, connective tissue disease, they all have a similar treatment path. And so we're not too worried about, what exactly is this or what is it turning into? We'll wait until that happens. So undifferentiated connective tissue disease remains. Rheumatoid arthritis is no longer one of my diagnoses. So from there, I saw an infectious, you guys went along with the journey, so I won't list off all of the specialists that I saw, but basically every test that could be completed or every specialist that you could see, I saw, and we did uncover a lot. I did test positive. I think I shared this piece already, so apologies for that, but Bartonella, which is, an infectious disease, and it is otherwise known as like cat scratch fever. And, I do have a cat. I used to have another cat that I had for like 16 years. But I didn't test positive for it currently. It's just something that's within my bloodstream. I had it at some time. And so, it could be contributing to some of my neurological symptoms. But right now we are sort of not directly treating it because, I got an echocardiogram and there's no evidence of the infection impacting my heart or my eyes. Got an eye exam as well. Which can move us right on into the vertical diplopia, which I did share with you guys already. But that is basically my eyes don't line, like the stimuli that I'm observing don't line up vertically for me. And so that can cause some double vision. It can cause blurriness in one eye or both eyes. It can cause some eye pain. And mine has a central root core, meaning it is coming from my central nervous system. And that's sort of the theme here, is that everything is coming from my autonomic and my central nervous systems. So vertical diplopia added to the list. Next up, we have some sort of inflammatory disease that we haven't quite uncovered yet. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second, because the more important piece is that, I forgot to mention 2017, I also had vasovagal syncope and orthostatic hypotension. So when I would stand up, my blood pressure and heart rate would drop and I would faint. So I didn't have POTS at the time. I didn't meet criteria for POTS. And so I did a tilt table test. You guys saw the video on that, and the results from that came back abnormal and actually shows that I have hyperadrenergic POTS, which basically there's like some nerve fiber damage in the adrenergic fibers of my heart. And that basically means that, so when everybody stands up, the blood pools to your legs. That's normal, right? It's moving with gravity. But for most people, they have the ability, their nerves have the ability to send that blood back up to your heart and up to your brain. And because I have small fiber neuropathy and because I have hyperadrenergic POTS, my blood stays in my legs and it also pools in my stomach. And it doesn't have the ability to pump it back up to my heart and to my brain. And so it overcompensates by sending a ton of adrenaline to your heart. And so basically that means that I literally live in like the sympathetic / like fight or flight mode 24/7, which can wreak obviously can wreak a lot of havoc on your body and your nervous system. So mine is pretty severe, and so POTS is a syndrome, and meaning that it comes from something else. It doesn't just develop out of nowhere. Usually there's an autoimmune or an inflammatory driver of some sort. And in my case, I have the autoimmune piece, but we also are thinking there might be an inflammatory component. We thought that I had adult onset Still's disease, and so there's not really like a great way to test for that. They look for like high ferritin in your blood, and like high C-reactive protein, or ESR, which is like something sedimentation rate. So those are like inflammatory markers. Mine are pretty normal for the most part. And so anyway, that plus a fever of unknown origin panel gets run, a genetic test to see if there's any, reasons why you're having the daily fevers, because mine were about 104 on a daily basis. You guys have seen the thermometer reads. It's always very high. And it peaks, in the afternoon and then again in the evening. And that's like a quotidian, I think that's how you say it, fever cycle. And that is very indicative of an inflammatory process. So, I could potentially still have Still's disease. I could be seronegative, but we were going to jump to Ilaris, which is a biologic, to really just cool everything down. But because, I didn't have those markers, and, we aren't 100% sure if that's what's going on, we are going to, or we have already started a trial of colchicine, which is an IL-1 inhibitor similar to the Ilaris, but it is, it's not a biologic. It is low risk in terms of, if I don't have an inflammatory condition, it's not going to be harmful for my body. So tomorrow will actually be 3 weeks on colchicine, and since being on colchicine, immediately, my daily fevers have gone from the 102 to 104.4 range down to the highest that I've had is like a 101. Usually it's like a 10 or 100.4 or a 100.9. And so that is significant progress, like night and day difference in terms of how I feel every day. So there's that piece. And then also, I have dropped 8 pounds, and I have literally done absolutely nothing different. And sort of the theory there is that, once you remove the inflammation from your body, that's what my body was holding on to, a ton of water, and that water was being stored in my tissues, which also is correlated with the hyperadrenergic POTS because of the blood pooling. And anyway, it's all connected. I'm still learning. There's a lot of pieces to put together, but the hyperadrenergic piece has been life-changing for me. Just understanding the balance between being upright and making sure I get some horizontal time, really structuring that within my day. And I use, my Apple Watch and my heart rate variability data throughout the day, as well as, just my symptoms that I talked about, those precursor symptoms, just managing those and intervening at that point. And so I think for the first time in 2 years, I am feeling like we have a path forward. It's not a path out of this. Obviously, all of these conditions are going to be with me forever, and that's okay. But I think the thing that I feel most at peace with is I knew that there was a missing piece to this puzzle, and until I found that piece of the puzzle, I refused to give up, because now that I know what's going on, again, I can thoroughly research, I can talk to other people who have this condition, and I can alter the way that I move throughout my day in order to best support my system to be able to function in the way that I need it to. And a quick example of that is before I get out of bed in the morning, before I try to sit up at all or get upright in any way, shape, or form, I need to slap my compression socks on, my compression bodysuit. I need to get a salt tab in my body, 2 to 4 sips of electrolytes. If it's a really bad morning, I might do like 2 to 3 crackers just for, that fast carb and like salt combination. When I tell you how different my days have been, just making that small adjustment, you guys have heard me say time and time again that mornings are so difficult for me for so many reasons. And that is a 1-minute shift in my day that can change the entire trajectory of my day, of my week, of my month. And so this flare, this acute flare that I entered in, last Wednesday, typically it would take me 4 to 6 weeks to get back to my baseline. And here I am, 9 days later, back to my baseline. So I think, again, I just really want to emphasize that you know your body best, and knowledge is power, not to be cliche, but it truly is. I feel so much autonomy. I've gained back a lot of the autonomy and a lot of the confidence in navigating my day to day in a way that's not going to send me into a flare, but it's also going to be supportive for my particular lifestyle. And I finally have hope for healing and for the next steps. And so, wild. And the last thing that I want to mention too is, with my particular case, like, I'm not beating the doctors up in any way, shape, or form. Like, they are operating within their scope. We've talked about the siloed nature of what medical care looks like. They're doing the best they can with the information and the resources that they have. A little side note, my neurologist yesterday told me that she is expected to see 25 patients in one day. I don't even know how that's physically possible, especially neurology, where it is very complex and there's a lot of overlapping features. So anyway, with the complex nature of my particular case with, there still are some potential things that could be uncovered. My autonomic neurologist is basically doing a review of every test that we've done over this last year, or 2 years or whatever it's been, just to make sure that my current medical team hasn't missed anything. So more to come on that, but my case is pretty complex because of the intermixing of the connective tissue disease, the infections, the EEG results, it impacting my central nervous system. I've had, white matter lesions, and I've had inflammation in my cerebral spinal fluid. So it's taken a really long time for us to figure out what's going on, but it is so worth it. So if you are stuck in the midst of the diagnostic limbo, doctors are gaslighting you, people are chalking it up to anxiety or your weight or your blood pressure. I mean, I've been told it all. Do not let that shrink your size like I did. I completely lost myself in this journey. There was a point where I was like, am I just anxious? Is this just all in my head? So don't let doctors shrink you. You know your body. Continue to push, advocate, do your research, find the right doctors. If you step into a neurologist's office and they disregard you or they don't create space for you, find another neurologist. And believe me, I understand that it's going to take, you wait 6 months for that neurology appointment, and it can feel intimidating to try to start that process over. But I promise you, it is so worth it. It's worth it to wait for the right doctor versus work with somebody who does not see you for who you are. So I think that is everything. More to come, I'm sure, on diagnoses in general, and more to come on how I use my Apple Watch data and my heart rate variability data to plan my morning, and then also how do I react and intervene when I'm catching some of those precursor symptoms so that I don't trigger a flare. So stay tuned for that. And thank you guys so much for being here with me on this journey. I truly would not be where I am today, just hearing all of your stories and, that are very similar to mine. Thank you guys for being here with me. And I cannot wait to just hone in and fine tune and, recalibrate my day-to-day so that I can get back to or find a new level of functioning that I feel good about. And you guys can do it too. So we are in this together. I'm sending you the largest hug, a big ol' smooch, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful and relaxing weekend. Bye guys.